the work that's happening right now is just fantastic. The organization is just top notch, and it's one of the things that drew me to working with PPMA.
This is the PMP Industry Insider Podcast.
Hello, everyone. Welcome out to another episode of the PMP Industry Insider Podcast, where we look at what is changing in the pest control industry, and we take you to the front lines to those that are driving those changes. I'm Donnie, Shelton, owner of Triangle Home Services, which has Triangle Pest as well as Triangle Lawn. And with me is the ever-present, omnipotent, omniscient Dan Gordon. Dan, would you like to say hello from where you're at? I don't know if people know where you're at, but not that it matters.
I'm in Florida, but that vocabulary lesson you just gave me, I think I knew omnipotent, but I didn't know the others. But,
omniscient, yes.
Hopefully they
omnipresent.
Were compliments. Okay.
Always.
Right. Cool.
I would never, ever insult you, Dan.
Right.
Just
yes. Me neither. So good morning, everyone. Dan Gordon, PCO Bookkeepers, PCO M&A specialists. We do outsource CFO work for the pest and lawn industry, as well as exit planning. And today we're talking with Jim Fredericks. Jim is a Ph.D. who's responsible for any and all things related to growing, protecting, promoting, and defending our industry with the public in his role as executive director. This is a new role, executive director of PPMA and senior vice president of public affairs for NPMA. So Jim's a board certified entomologist, is formerly senior vice president of technical and regulatory affairs for NPMA, and has a long history of serving as the chief entomologist and spokesperson for PPMA's consumer media and marketing efforts. This is one that I didn't know about you, Jim. Prior to joining the association, Jim spent more than a decade working for Home Paramount Pest Control in Forest Hill, Maryland, as technical director. And when longtime PPMA executive director Cindy Manis, who we had on our podcast a while back, announced her retirement, Jim threw in his hat and they decided that he would be the next leader. He completed an exhaustive interview process, I can only imagine, with the search committee, and the association announced his appointment at Pest World 2022, and hopefully I covered everything. Jim, welcome.
Holy cow. Yeah, you covered everything. Thanks, Dan. I hear your introductions like that, and I appreciate it. I suspect that came from like the bio that's on the website, or maybe we even sent it over. And I sometimes, I spent those years with Home Paramount Pest Control, almost a decade. And that's really, that was some of the most valuable time that I spent in the industry. I've loved my experience at NPMA and now this new challenge with PPMA. But getting a chance to actually work the front line, so to speak, right, and work with a company, I think is one of the most valuable things that I've done. And I kind of treasure that decade or so that I spent traveling all over the East Coast, working with technicians and running routes when need be, and that was really great. So thanks for bringing that up. It's fun to remember that.
Oh
yeah. That's neat stuff. Sometimes there's a theory and sometimes there's practice, and when you put them together, that's the best combination. So,
well, you have to have both. There's no doubt about it. You have to have both. Yeah. Well, Jim, hey, thanks so much for coming on board. And, obviously we want to get into a little bit about, what you've been doing at NPMA, but more importantly about where you're going with PPMA. This is obviously new. I personally used to have my inbox blew up by Cindy. That has now transitioned to you, Jim. Thank you.
Glad to do it.
From PPMA. But let's get into it. Yeah. So we had Cindy on a while back, and we were talking about PPMA, and I was just espousing all the benefits that I'm a huge supporter for PPMA. I think you guys do great work. I very much enjoy the products that you guys produce in terms of marketing materials, support for the industry. I think it's just a great organization. So she talked a little bit about that, but we also asked her, people still are somewhat confused, like, well, isn't PPMA part of NPMA? Is NPMA part of PPMA? And so do you mind just kind of like once and for all, the final, this is what it is. This is PPMA, this is NPMA, and let's just kind of walk through that to start with.
I will do my best, but I can't make any promises, Donnie.
Right.
That I'm not surprised that some of your listeners and some pest control pros across the country might have some confusion there. It doesn't surprise me that you have a little bit confusion there, because sometimes it's hard to differentiate between the two groups. I guess the best way that I can explain it is that think of NPMA as the umbrella organization. NPMA has its own membership, right? Those members pay dues. There's a board of directors. There's a NPMA budget. There's a mission. NPMA does events and training, programming, all of those things. And then underneath NPMA, underneath that umbrella, are sister organizations that have their own separate boards and operating budgets and bylaws. These groups are like Quality Pro, the Pest Management Foundation, which is near and dear to my heart, and then also the Professional Pest Management Alliance, or PPMA. And so what PPMA does is think of it as the consumer marketing arm of NPMA. When PPMA speaks to the media, we do so as NPMA, which is probably where the confusion comes from, because when we, if I'm speaking to, the Akron Daily Journal about bed bugs, then I'm speaking on behalf of the National Pest Management Association, and as part of my role as the Senior Vice President and Chief Entomologist for NPMA. The reason we do that is because it doesn't make any sense to speak on behalf of PPMA. Because the consumer doesn't have any idea what PPMA is, and the consumer doesn't need to know that PPMA exists. What we need to, the people that need to know about PPMA are people like your listeners, people like NPMA members, people like the thousands of pest control operators all across the country that might be listening to your show. What you can think of PPMA as like the Got Milk campaign for pest control. Our mandate is to grow, promote, protect, and defend the industry. And so I might be at a meeting, or I might be talking to a pest control pro, and they say, oh, I'm part of PPMA because I'm an NPMA member. But that's not really the case. NPMA membership dues don't go to PPMA in any way. Instead, PPMA is 100% funded through voluntary donations that are given annually by companies, both large and small, including suppliers. And one of the cool things that I've learned in my new role here is that the amazing work that PPMA is doing to grow and elevate the industry is funded by a prestigious but still rather small group of just several hundred companies. These are the leaders, the trailblazers, the super committed and involved companies. The work that PPMA does do benefits everyone in the industry, though.
So Jim, can I stop there real quick? So I'm just curious, and this is really for my own knowledge here. Why break off public and media? Why break that off as a separate division of NPMA? Like, why wouldn't they just be like, well, that's what we have to do, right? We have media, and we have to deal with the media. And I say deal, but we have to have a public face. And why would we need a different arm, something like Quality Pro or whatever, to talk to the media, to be the media arm for NPMA?
So it's a good question. And a lot of it has to do with the legacy of PPMA. So this year, PPMA turned 25 years old. And that vision began with just a very few committed partners that wanted to go above and beyond and think about, how does NPMA, started within NPMA, do this work? And in order to do this work and do it well, we need to raise money, right? And gotcha. So rather than raise dues across the board, that was a committed group of folks 25 years ago said, hey, we're committed. We will put this money up. We'll start an organization that can work hand in hand with the mission of NPMA and help to grow the entire industry. And so that's where the legacy comes from there.
So is there a dues schedule if you want to join, or do you just give whatever you feel like, or is it how do you budget your, how do you know how much money's coming in and what's available?
Yeah. So we have, so it's based 100% on voluntary donations, right? Mm-hmm. And so we do have, and companies will pledge their amount. So there's a couple of things, a couple of ways that companies do that. We have our Guardian level supporters. Guardians pledge to give 0.1% of their annual revenues. And so that's a big part of our budget. We also have investors that can give a couple $100 or a couple $1,000. It might not be at the Guardian level, but they pledge that. And so based on those pledges for the year, we're able to determine our budgets. Another cool program that I'd love to be able to talk more about at some point here is our mainframe product. So PPMA mainframe is a way that pest control companies can basically have all of the tools that a PR firm could bring to their business, but for just $99 a month. And so based on those PPMA mainframe subscribers, we're able to kind of budget that out. So it's a little bit tricky, but we have some really great donors who are willing to stand by those pledges, and we're able to budget that way.
Let me just add a quick plug for that, because that mainframe product, fantastic. If you're not taking advantage of that as a pest control or lawn care company, like, you are totally missing the boat. I am a huge fan. I very much enjoy the pieces that you guys produce. I think it's a fantastic, it is absolutely, in my mind, a huge benefit for the industry. I see a lot of value in that mainframe product. We can get to that a little bit later, but Dan, you're going to ask a question before I stepped on.
Sure. So before I do ask the question, just one more. So do you have a bunch of manufacturers who also contribute, or is it just PMPs?
We do have both PMPs as well as suppliers, and so we have some really generous suppliers who are also part of that. And the whole idea here is that these are all companies who who see the value in the work that PPMA does, and that is to drive consumers to professional pest control. And they want to help the entire industry forward by supporting it. And because if the industry grows, then every one of those companies grows.
Right. So Cindy was in and now she's retired. So what's your vision for the future? What changes, if any, are you going to make in the near term or long term, or are you going to, continue along the path?
Yeah. So it would be really tempting to just come in and kind of sit back and just ride this PPMA machine, because the work that's happening right now is just fantastic. The organization is just top notch, and it's one of the things that drew me to working with PPMA. But if I could think about focus in the near and long term is for both growth and continuity. If we can get the word out about PPMA and get more folks to invest in PPMA, then we can do even greater things, right? We're doing awesome things, and so what do you change? Well, I don't think you change anything. I think what you need to do is grow the investor base so that we can do more, and that's the thing. So we want to maintain continuity, but then do more. I mean, PCT Magazine cited the number one reason for driving industry growth as PPMA. That was huge. That's huge for us. And so imagine what we could do with even more companies involved. And I ask myself sometimes, how could it be that people are not investing such a vital program? But that's the whole point, right? We need to get the word out. And then, we've built this momentum over the past 25 years. And I think that what we're doing right now, what PPMA has done, is second to none. We've successfully shifted public perception to be seen as both a positive and necessary service. We're going to continue marketing to customers through digital, social media tactics, educate them through the news media, and serving up our public service announcements on relevant channels. And we'll continue to invest in research as well.
Well, Jim, one thing you said that I want to expand on a little bit, especially for our listeners, because I think it's really an important point that you made, is I love it when there's a Terminex commercial or there's an Orkin commercial and they're flooding the airways. And the reason I love it, I mean, obviously we compete with them, but they raise awareness in the consumer's mind. And if you look at the stats of our industry is expanding as a percentage of people who are accepting and using the services that we provide. And, I think one of the greatest benefits that you guys have done that I'm very, very much impressed with is getting these spots, on news channels, on national television, where you're talking about the benefits of pest control, why pest control is important. It's truly expanding the industry at a scale that makes a difference, right? I mean, when I was really younger in our business, we'd get the call from the local news station, "Hey, we want to do a story on this," and I'd run out and shine my flashlight and look pretty stupid like I normally do, right? They'd give me the interview and I'm there, Ricky.
Sorry, I was on mute, but I have to agree. Go ahead.
But here I am in front of the camera, and I don't know what to do with my hands, the whole Ricky. But I mean, the point being is that, if I were to say, "Hey, I'm a listener and I'm wondering how does this really benefit me?" I'd have to say that's probably the number one thing. You guys are doing a fantastic job of actually expanding the market. I don't, Dan, do you see it that way? I mean, I know for me personally, I love the segments. I think it really is. I think they're having an impact in increasing the percentage of people who actually use and are aware of pest control services.
I think that the industry is changing that way. I think that the consumer is becoming much more aware from several, from several initiatives. And I think it's terrific. The question is, given a limited budget, the got milk example, I'm sure the milk industry had a gazillion dollars. Well, maybe PPMA has a limited budget. So,
well, almost everybody drinks milk, right?
Right.
And that's what we would like to get. And that's what we'd like to see for pest control, that everybody's got pest control, right? It's just like milk in the fridge. And so it's,
our product looks like milk. You could play off that. I don't know if you'd want to drink it and have the little mustache, Yeah.
But our messaging always is, geared to grow the industry and drive consumers to a pro. We all the time get questions from media about, like a do-it-yourself product or some sort of home remedy or some kind of mint leaves on the windowsill to keep the ants out. And what we tell them is, pest control is not a do-it-yourself project. You need to call a pro. And so that's the message constantly: call a pro. And we try to drive people to the pestworld.org website because that's where they're going to learn more about professional pest control, and they'll be able to use our Find a Pro locator and find an NPMA member that's near them. And so that's always the message: not a do-it-yourself project.
Right. So let's back this up. So I'm an average, let's just say I own $2 to $5 million company. I'm thinking about, I'm aware of PPMA. I obviously want you guys to continue to grow the industry because I know it's going to grow my business. What would you say is like the benefit of me, as an owner? Let's just say I'm 2 million. What's the benefit of me joining PPMA?
Yeah, well, there's some immediate benefits, right? So let's say you're a $2 million company and you invest at the Guardian level. That's a $2,000 investment annually, right? 1/10%. And what you get is the kind of long-term, big picture, altruistic benefits of growing the industry. And if more people are considering professional pest control, that grows your potential client base. But then secondly, you get access to all of that information that's in Mainframe. So social media resources, sample press releases. And there's also, something that's not used a lot is our crisis management and crisis communications. And thank goodness it's not used a lot, but it's kind of a little used, or a little known, I should say.
Little known. That's probably a better way of framing it. Yeah, for sure.
As a PPMA investor, you have access to the resources and the PR resources that can help you manage your way through a crisis if it would happen. Things happen in pest control, and occasionally, if they do, you need to have someone to stand by you and help you to kind of get through and make sure that messaging is right. Sometimes you need to know what to say, or sometimes you need to know when not to say a thing. And that PPMA is here to help with that. And so there's some real value there as well.
Gotcha. And to me, I joined when we were I think we were like a little over $1 million. And back then I had to join to get access to these research studies that PPMA would do. And it would basically, it's consumer attitudes, it's consumer opinions concerning, and I would use those surveys to basically drive our marketing messaging. Like, it mainly because it was like, we're going to be, for us back then, it was a ton of money to do a commercial or to do, any kind of advertising. I wanted to make sure that we did the best that we could with what we had. And so it was a way of me getting data that I couldn't afford otherwise. And so I think that's also a huge thing, just the access to data that you get of what's really happening in the industry.
Yeah. Our consumer research, I think, is really valuable.
100%.
So, when you're a growing company, a small or medium-sized company, you need to know exactly where to put those marketing dollars. And, when it comes to generational considerations, you want to know the right way to communicate with the people that you're focused on. And so our consumer research is really important. And we do it a couple different ways. Every couple of years we do our consumer attitude survey, which is kind of like the big one. It's a big deal. We look at all the different ways that different generations, different demographics are using pest control or considering pest control. But then we also have a quarterly Harris poll that we commission to kind of get the pulse on some very specific, maybe seasonal questions, as well as get an idea about how pest control is viewed in the public eye. And then something that's really interesting and is really intriguing to me is, and I think Cindy might have talked about this a little bit, is our AI research or artificial intelligence research. And that sounds smarter than me because it is smarter than me. It's not something that we do, but we have a firm that takes a look at and takes kind of a carefully curated selection of Twitter users and looks at the conversations around pests that are happening on Twitter, and then is able to translate that into kind of what's going on out in the world. And so we get an idea about like, it sounds like there's some, a whole bunch of box elder bug, conversations that are happening in the Northeast. And so companies can kind of react in real time to that. And it's really an interesting insight and something that we're really just learning about, but it's really valuable stuff when it comes to kind of this, getting your finger on the pulse of what consumers are talking about and how you might be able to cater to their needs.
That is so neat, the whole AI thing. So if I join NPMA, I could pay my dues and do nothing and get the mailings, or I could participate and, get on committees and move up the ranks. How about PPMA? Is there a participation piece, or is it just, pay your dues and then look at the resources?
Yeah, but we have an amazing executive committee, as well as a board of directors that guides our work and helps to bring new investors on board. We also have a select group of marketing professionals from pest control companies and suppliers who sit on our marketing council, and they kind of serve in an advisory role as we develop our plan, our annual plan for the following year. But the real participants are those companies that are fueling the funding, right? That are giving. And so That's really how you can participate. You can help to participate by funding these efforts. We also have the resources of the NPMA staff, and we have really an awesome staff here, and that's how I originally got involved with the PPMA work. We lean on our entomology team for editorial review, content review, make sure that the things are accurate. So I can take a little bit more of that load off of them now in my role, but that's the stuff that I was doing. Those folks are also the ones that we call on as spokespeople for the media. They're doing the interviews, sometimes appearing on TV. You might see Dr. Mike Bentley on the Weather Channel or something like that. And then, our events team, financial membership teams, we're all kind of integrated because we're all under that NPMA umbrella.
So you mentioned something earlier, and I want to make sure that we dig in this a little bit. This AI tool, it's freaking awesome. We talked about it on our last podcast. I think it's pretty innovative, and I think it's really cool. Yeah, it is really cool. Can you just briefly talk a little bit about kind of what is new, and not that, me personally, I don't think you always have, new doesn't necessarily always mean better, right? But what do you guys have coming down, the pike for PPMA? Like by the way, the AI thing I think is fantastic, but is there anything else? I mean, do you guys have any new surveys that you're doing that you got coming out? I mean, what's going on? What's coming up, I should say?
Yeah. So two big things coming up this year. And that is, one, we're launching our Instagram presence. And so obviously social media is so important now. It took us a while to figure out exactly how to break into Instagram, because after all, who wants to see pictures of bugs? I mean, guys like me, guys like you maybe want to look at pictures of bugs, but how do you do that? And so we're going to be launching our Instagram presence this year, and I think people are going to find it useful, and it's going to be communicating to a really important demographic there. So, but then the other big project this year is a redesign of pestworld.org. That website, because that's the mothership for PPMA, and we try to drive all of our traffic, whether it's social media, whether it's traditional media interviews. We try to drive everyone back to pestworld.org. And so we're going to be redesigning that kind of and making that easier to use. We have so much content there that we have to make sure that people just don't get lost, and they're getting to the places they need to get, and they're getting the message to call a pro. So those are the two big projects happening this year.
So any videos of you on TikTok dancing, singing
with bugs?
Yeah.
I don't personally have any bug dancing videos on TikTok, but we do have a TikTok presence. I mean, I think we have 80,000 followers on TikTok. We have a video we have a video on TikTok that has more than 1 million views. It was a bed bug hatching from an egg. And it, to some sort of music, and it went viral. It was over 1 million views. I don't know what it's at now, but you ought to check out the TikTok channels. The TikTok is pretty fun because you will see some funny stuff on there as well. And so we're speaking to that audience through TikTok. We're speaking to a specific audience through Facebook, through Pinterest, through Instagram now. So you ought to check out all those social media channels.
So that's kind of interesting in that you're looking at TikTok, but the newest set of buyers coming up is Gen Z. So in your opinion, how do they differ from millennials, Gen X, baby boomers, and when will they become a force, and what are you doing to capture that market?
Yeah. With Gen Z is just aging into being home buyers. Gen Z is just getting to the stage at which they're becoming real important pest control buyers. I think that we're kind of pleased with what we're seeing with regard to that generation. They clearly see a value in professional services and the roles that professional services like pest control can play in protecting their health. We know that generation sees pest control as an essential service. Now, of course, they're incredibly tech I don't know if they're tech savvy or they're tech dependent.
Both.
So companies are going to need to continue to evolve their communication methods and make sure that they have the right tools to communicate to those consumers. I think this group of consumers prefers pay-as-you-go models, and so when it comes to contracts and pest control agreements, maybe that will need to evolve or transform. But we'll be working hard to make sure that we really understand this group in our next consumer attitude survey, because like I said, they're just aging into that kind of sweet spot of home ownership and being real buyers of pest control.
So that's pretty interesting. The subscription model, from a financial perspective, is an outstanding model, and the younger people like to have everything on subscription. So it bodes well for both the finances of a pest control company, but also to the needs of the consumer. So if you had a crystal ball and you said, how will the industry look in 10 or 20 years and beyond? What do you think? What changes? What do you think it'll look like?
Yeah. Well, I mean, the good news is that no matter how good our industry gets at controlling bugs, there's still plenty of pests, and there will be plenty of pests in the future, right? But seriously, I think that, if in the next 10 or 20 years, levels of professionalism in the industry are going to continue to rise. I think that our industry will be viewed as trusted partners in food protection, experts that protect the food that we eat, the places we live, the people we love. The narrative won't change so much, I think, for PPMA, and that's what makes our industry so great. We have a really great message. What we can't predict is the media that consumers will learn about professional pest control through, right? So I don't know. At one point, I think I thought I knew what 10 years from now would look like. But when I think back 10 years ago, this is not what I expected it to look like. I still was like hoping for Jetsons flying cars, and we have like a Roomba vacuuming, but she's not really like Rosie from the Jetsons.
You clearly haven't used Triangle Pest as a
for sure.
But so we have to, I think, just constantly be reassessing our methods and our impact to make sure that that PPMA's message and the industry's message is conveyed effectively to those consumers in the future.
Yeah, no,
interesting.
I was going to say, I think that in general, I like Gen Z. I like where it's going. And who knows as far as technology? I mean, to me, what gets me excited is drone technology. A drone can't do an inspection, but a drone could certainly help a technician tremendously, to start. I think that's it. But anyway, we won't go there. We talked a little bit about that when we were coming back. Dan and I both got super excited at Pest World. We stopped at this drone booth and we were just going on and on about the drone and like how they're doing inspections. And anyway,
so many things a drone can do.
Oh my gosh, it was crazy. But so one last thing here, Jim, and then we're going to let you go. But anything else that you want to share with the audience, about PPMA, your role, where it's going, what they can get? I mean, just in general, anything.
Somebody wants to get involved. How do they do that?
Yeah, I think the most important thing that I would like to convey to your listeners is that if you're not already a PPMA investor, consider contributing today. The more companies we have involved, the more work we can do. And any amount helps. But, I think it's worthwhile to consider giving at the Guardian level, and that's 0.1% of your annual revenue. The entry-level access to those PPMA mainframe resources that we talked about is $1,200 a year or $99 a month. We also have opportunities for supplier companies to invest. If you're interested, reach out to me, right? So you should be able to find me. It's on the NPMA website. But honestly, email ppma@pestworld.org. you can call me, call NPMA. I would love to talk to folks about ways that they can get involved.
So just as a distinction between the two fees, the $1,200 a year, that would be on top of the Guardian, or is that a subset of?
Yeah. Assuming that the Guardian level investment gets you to $1,200.
Right.
And so that's kind of the minimum entry point for those mainframe resources. So if you're a $1 million annual revenue company and the $1,000 would get you to the Guardian level, you would need to up that to $1,200 in order to have access to the mainframe. Yeah.
Okay.
I think that I was going to say, I think the thing I'll add to that is that if you're not a member, you really should be, even if it's for selfish reasons. It is absolutely a way for you to basically have an outsourced marketing and PR firm that it already has all the content done. This is different in that you don't have to go out and create it. I think that is a huge benefit. And not to mention, you'll also be expanding the industry for the future. So to me, this is kind of a no-brainer if you're not doing this. And by the way, I don't, for me, Jim, you can make a check out. I'll give you the address. No, I'm just kidding. I have no incentive other than I really believe in it. I've been doing it, since for Triangle we've been a member of PPMA. Gosh, like I said, since we're about $1.5 million, and I've never looked back. And I think it's an important part. I think 2 reasons. Number one, for selfish reasons, I very much enjoy the content that you guys have. I think it's a great resource for any business to have in our industry. And 2, obviously, I want the market to expand. I feel like the work you guys are doing it has an impact. I don't feel like it's a waste of money. So, with that, Jim, I just want to thank you for coming on and spending some time with us. Congratulations on the new role. Look forward to seeing what you're going to do in that role and kind of where PPMA is going to go and how it's going to support the industry. Dan, any parting thoughts here before we finish out?
No, I think we've covered it all. I really appreciate you coming on with us, and let's see where it goes. It sounds like a very exciting time.
I really appreciate you guys having me on, and I appreciate your support. So this was a lot of fun. Thanks.
No problem at all. Just a reminder, this episode was sponsored by WorkWave, Co-March. And so if you we always appreciate support of our sponsors. Also, all the resources and topics that we talked about is available on pmpindustryinsider.com. Just take a look under show notes for this show. And Dan and I are not bashful at all about asking for some sort of review rating on however it is that you can consume the podcast. And if you're wondering, if you want to look at Dan's beautiful face now, and it is beautiful, especially now that he's in Florida, it might even have a little sun going on.
Well, the problem or the issue is now that I have to shave every time for our episodes.
So that's a long way of me saying we have a YouTube channel now. And so if you would rather watch us speak versus listen to us, you can do that as well. And we'll put a link out for that. And so with that, we're going to sign off. Jim, thanks again. We'll see you all next time. You guys take care, okay?
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Bye now.
Take care.